There are classified military files that describe unexplained encounters on the most remote continent of the planet. The largest U.S. naval expedition to Antarctica ended weeks earlier than planned, with no official explanation. 4,700 men and 13 warships set sail in 1946 towards a continent without armies or known threats. They returned with damaged aircraft, unexplained casualties, and an institutional silence that was never broken by any government. Admiral Byrd, a decorated war hero, made a single statement that no one could interpret. He said that defensive measures needed to be taken against enemy fighters coming from the polar regions. Germany had fallen, Japan had surrendered, and the Cold War was just beginning. So who was that mysterious polar enemy? Decades before Byrd set foot on that continent, an ancient text had already described in detail what might lie there. A prophet who lived more than 2,000 years ago claimed to have been taken by angels to the absolute edge of the earth. He did not record poetic metaphors, but specific geography, numbered mountains, and an abyss with measurements. His name was Enoch, and what he wrote aligns with Antarctica in a way that is very difficult to rationally ignore. What you are going to discover today is not a conspiracy theory, nor a free interpretation of sacred writings of any kind. It is a direct comparison, verse by verse, between the Book of Enoch and the verifiable real geography of Antarctica. Let's start with the most fundamental question that any serious researcher should ask before dismissing this ancient text. Why does Enoch's description match a continent that humanity did not officially discover until the year 1820? In chapter 18, verse 5, the prophet writes that he saw the way of the angels at the end of the world. It does not say the center of the world or the coast. It says the absolute confines, the edge where the land ends and the void begins. If you position yourself in Mesopotamia where Enoch lived and look south, the end of the world points to a single possible place on Earth. Egypt was known, Africa was traversed, but further south, there was no mapped territory. The Southern Ocean, the most violent on the planet, had blocked any human exploration for thousands of years without exception. For the ancient world, the Deep South was a threshold where known reality simply came to a halt. And yet, Enoch claims to have arrived there not by boat or on foot, but carried by beings of fire with changing forms. The beings that transported him were guardians of borders that humans should never cross under any circumstances. According to the text, they had the mission of taking Enoch to that specific place so that he would leave an everlasting record of what he would see. What he saw there was so beyond the reach of human experience that it would have been impossible to invent it without having witnessed it. In chapter 17, verse 1, they are described as creatures that appeared as living flames when they wanted to show themselves as men. They were entities capable of traversing unimaginable distances in an instant and transforming their appearance at will. These beings took Enoch to the very edge of creation, where something awaited that was to be recorded forever. What was found there was so extraordinary that scholars have spent centuries trying to decipher which real place it referred to. The answer was hidden in one of the most misunderstood verses in all of known biblical and apocryphal literature. In chapter 18, verse 6, the prophet writes that he saw a place that burns day and night without any interruption. For 2,000 years, theologians assumed that he was describing fire, a pit of flames, an image of eternal torment. But there is a crucial difference between saying he saw fire and saying he saw a place that is burning, and Enoch was deliberately precise. Between November and February, the sun in Antarctica never sets, not once in more than 90 consecutive days. It spins in a continuous loop over the horizon, creating what modern scientists call the polar day, or midnight sun. For someone who has never experienced this phenomenon, the sky would seem to be on fire, constant, endless, inexplicable. The description of Enoch is not theology, but Antarctic meteorology with the vocabulary of 3 millennia ago. It could be argued that the Arctic also experiences the midnight sun during the summer months of the Northern Hemisphere. But Enoch adds a crucial detail that rules out the Northern Hemisphere from any geographical consideration. Describe that place as chaotic, terrible, and absolutely devoid of life, with no visible living beings in any direction. The Arctic, in the times of Enoch, housed animals, migratory tribes, and complete ecosystems. None of that fits in that description. Antarctica remains the most desolate continent on the planet, where nothing grows and silence is absolute. It is the only place on Earth where the words of Enoch fit precisely without forcing a single line of the original text. But the burning sky is just the beginning, because what Enoch describes next is where the story becomes shocking. In the same chapter 18, verse 6, it continues that he saw 7 stars like great mountains burning in the darkness. No stars in the sky, but colossal masses, so radiant that they seemed to emit heat and light from their very core. Every detail that Enoch adds to his description narrows the field until only a single continent remains on the planet. In ancient cosmology, the word star could refer to something majestic, dominant, and powerful. In Antarctica, there is a mountain range that fits this description in a way that surpasses all coincidence. The Sentinel Range in the Ellsworth Mountains of West Antarctica has the highest peaks. In the center of that mountain range stands Mount Vinson, with more than 4,800 meters above sea level. Mount Vinson is not alone. It is surrounded by 6 peaks that dominate the ice like guardians of a forbidden place. 7 mountains, exactly 7, where Enoch claimed to have seen 7 stars burning like mountains. During the Antarctic summer, the ice and snow reflect sunlight in absolutely all directions. The peaks shine with an intensity that can be blinding, and from a distance, they seem to radiate their own internal light. Someone who saw this for the first time, without any scientific frame of reference, would say exactly what Enoch wrote down. And Enoch does not stop in the mountains, because beyond he found something that transformed his vision of the cosmos. In chapter 18, verses 10 and 11, it is written that he saw a terrible place where there was no sky above, nor solid ground below. Without a horizon, without spatial reference, without up or down, only chaos and emptiness in all directions at once. Where exactly on Earth is there a place that literally erases the boundary between the sky and the ground in a physical way? In the deep interior of Antarctica, beyond the mountain ranges and coastal ice shelves, there exists the plateau. In whiteout conditions, the boundary between the sky and the ground disappears in a completely literal and verifiable way. There is no possible horizon. There is no spatial reference point. Pilots call it absolute spatial disorientation. Modern explorers call it the white abyss. And those who have experienced it say it feels like floating in absolute nothingness. If Enoch was on that Antarctic plateau under whiteout conditions, he would have written exactly the same words he wrote. But according to the text, that terrible place was not empty by accident. It had a deliberate purpose and a specific function. That experience of total emptiness is what Enoch describes with a precision that no ancient writer could have imagined. And without that description, without those impossible coordinates, no one would have ever known where to search for the prison of the Watchers. Enoch experienced it without scientific or instrumental preparation, which makes his description even more remarkable. In chapter 18, verse 14, the prophet writes that that place is the prison of the angels, kept there until the judgment. No human beings or demons, specifically angels, the Watchers, the 200 angelic beings mentioned in Genesis 6. According to the account, these angels descended to earth, took human wives, and corrupted all of creation. From that union were born the Nephilim, beings of colossal stature that Genesis describes as the heroes of antiquity. Giants that, according to Enoch, reached heights of 3,000 cubits and consumed everything that humanity had built. Their punishment was not immediate death, but imprisonment in a place so remote that no human being could reach them. A sealed place in the darkness where they would remain until the final judgment, chained and waiting to account for their actions. That place exists today, frozen and forbidden, safeguarded by international treaties that limit access to its depths. The Antarctic Treaty was signed in 1959, during the height of the Cold War, and achieved something unprecedented in modern diplomatic history. Union between the United States and the Soviet Union, two nations in existential conflict under a completely unprecedented common goal. That objective was to keep Antarctica out of the reach of military activity, nuclear testing, and free exploration. On the surface, the treaty protected the environment and guaranteed peaceful scientific research among rival nations. But no one has answered why specifically Antarctica and not the Arctic or the deep ocean. What did that continent have that made the most powerful nations in the world agree to jointly block it? Some researchers believe that the treaty protects what lies beneath the ice, not oil, but something more. Something much older, more dangerous, something that could rewrite the history of human civilization. But the treaty does not explain why the radar images of that region remain classified decades after signing it. The concept of a place of confinement for angelic beings appears in multiple ancient traditions around the world. However, no other ancient text describes that place with the geographical precision that we find in the words of Enoch. That precision is exactly what distinguishes this account from conventional mythology and makes it a unique document. Radar images have revealed massive subglacial lakes, ancient river valleys, and anomalies that are difficult to explain. In 2016, satellite images captured a pyramidal formation in the Ellsworth Mountains of Antarctica. The geologists dismissed it as a natural ridge, but the angles were too uniform and the symmetry too perfect. It is located exactly in the region where Enoch claimed to have seen the 7 burning mountains, according to the coordinates in the text. Geological coincidence, or evidence that the Book of Enoch describes real coordinates of a real place? In chapter 21, verses 1 to 3, Enoch arrives at an empty place where he sees 7 stars chained together like mountains. Not free or scattered across the sky, but chained, fixed, tied to a place from which they can never escape. When he asks his angelic guide what those stars are, the answer freezes him. They are prisoners with a counted sentence. The angel replies that they are stars that transgressed God's commandment and that they have been chained there for 10,000 years. Not for eternity, not forever, but for a specific, measurable period. A sentence with a calculable expiration date. 10,000 years with an implicit start date means that at some point that prison will definitely open. If Enoch's vision occurred about 3,000 years ago, and the condemnation is for 10,000, the remaining time is shortening. This disturbing possibility coexists with a question that skeptics have the right to always raise. Could all of this not be mythology, symbolic language designed to convey moral lessons to ancient communities? The Book of Enoch was considered sacred scripture and was directly cited in the New Testament. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church includes it in its canonical Bible to this day as an inseparable part of divine revelation. It was only later, when the Church decided to exclude it from the official canon, that the account of Enoch was relegated to the Apocrypha. The lingering question is this: were they excluded because he was false, or because he revealed too much about what remains hidden today? Let's return to the text, because there are scientific findings in Antarctica that go beyond geography and enter into the biological. In 2012, Russian scientists drilled down to the surface of Lake Vostok, buried under nearly 3 kilometers of Antarctic ice. That lake had been completely sealed off from the outside world for at least 15 million years without any contact. When they analyzed the samples, they found living organisms of species never before seen by any laboratory in the world. Bacteria that had survived in total darkness and freezing temperatures for a full 15 million years. This finding rewrote the boundaries of what biology considered possible in terms of extreme survival. And he posed a question that scientists cannot answer yet. What else could be alive beneath that continent? Life forms that have been isolated from the world for millions of years, evolving in silence beneath inaccessible layers of ice. Antarctica is the only place on Earth where biology, geology, and the text of Enoch converge at the same time. In the McMurdo dry valleys, there is the Blood Falls, which flows from Taylor Glacier in a deep and intense crimson. For decades, scientists could not explain that color, too vivid, too uniform to have a simple cause. They discovered that iron-rich water, trapped under 400 meters of ice for millions of years, was emerging. Upon contacting the outside oxygen, the iron instantly oxidized and stained the water a red that resembled royal blood. But what is truly disturbing is not the color, but what that water contained inside when it was analyzed in detail. Extremophilic microorganisms that survive without light or free oxygen, feeding on iron and sulfur. Living beings that exist in conditions that no scientist would have considered possible before that discovery. If angelic beings were sealed in a place cut off from light, air, and the superficial world, they would need exactly that. An environment like the one we find in Antarctica, capable of sustaining life forms in conditions of extreme darkness and cold. With all this in mind, let's return to the Book of Enoch, because chapter 24 adds even more specific geographical details. In verses 1 to 3 of that chapter, Enoch describes a mountain range of fire that burned continuously day and night. Beyond that mountain range, he saw 7 magnificent mountains, arranged in an orientation that he recorded with precise detail. 3 to the east, 3 to the south, and 1 dominating the center, higher than all the others, like a solitary throne. Enoch not only describes the distribution, he adds that from that point, the surrounding area was of absolute solitude. If you observe the Sentinel mountain range from a satellite, you will see that the main peaks are not evenly distributed. They are grouped in the exact pattern that Enoch describes. 3 to the east, 3 to the south, and Mount Vinson dominating the center. That type of cartographic coincidence, in a text written 3,000 years before satellites, demands an explanation. No other mountain system reproduces this distribution pattern with such textual correspondence. In verse 7, Enoch describes a tree of unmatched fragrance whose leaves and flowers never wither. A tree in Antarctica seems impossible in the present, but fossil records tell a radically different story. 100 million years ago, Antarctica was covered with temperate forests, filled with trees, ferns, rivers, and diverse wildlife. It was a rich and productive ecosystem, long before any human set foot on the surface of planet Earth. But the most intriguing possibility is that Enoch did not see the distant past, but the near future of that same continent. Scientists warn that if temperatures continue to rise, the Antarctic ice sheets will collapse. Some climate models indicate that in 200 years, parts of the continent could once again support real vegetation. Could Enoch have seen that future Antarctica transformed, alive, freed from the ice that has covered it for so many millennia? In the Book of Enoch, that tree is called the Tree of Wisdom, whose fruit grants knowledge to the righteous. In Christian theology, it is linked to the Tree of Life in Eden, but it also represents forbidden knowledge. Knowledge stored, sealed, and locked away with the Watchers in that place, at the end of the world that no one was meant to find. A knowledge that, if rediscovered, would change everything we understand about human origins. In chapter 69, Enoch lists the Watchers and the forbidden secrets they taught to ancient humanity. Azazel taught how to make swords, knives, and shields, military technology delivered out of its time. Semyaza taught enchantments and the use of roots, the mastery over plants and hidden forces. Almaros taught how to break spells, Barakiel astrology, and Kokabeel the knowledge of the constellations. They were not simple skills. They were complete sciences and advanced technologies delivered prematurely. According to the text, that knowledge was forbidden because it was stolen and because it corrupted the entirety of the world before being sealed. The Nephilim, the result of that transgression, were the ultimate reason why God decided to send the flood upon the earth. And what if part of that knowledge remains under the ice, waiting to be discovered by whoever arrives first? What if the powers that signed the Antarctic Treaty know this, and that agreement protects that secret more than any ecosystem? In chapter 10, God commands the Archangel Raphael to bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into the perpetual darkness of the abyss. He also orders him to cover the well with irregular rocks so that Azazel remains in absolute darkness forever. Most people assume that this desert is in the Middle East, but there is a fact that this interpretation cannot explain. Few people know it, but Antarctica receives less precipitation than the Sahara, which technically makes it a desert. And in that white and frozen desert, the idea of a well dug by divine forces no longer seems so impossible to imagine. What Enoch calls the well in the desert is not a metaphor. It is a coordinate that points to the deepest south of the planet. And if Azazel, the leader of the Watchers, was cast there, his prison would be the most inaccessible that exists on Earth. No human being has ever reached the bottom of the Bentley subglacial trench, and perhaps that is exactly what was intended. Viewed from above, its irregular ice surface looks exactly like an expanse of chaotic, sharp, white rocks. Could the well that God commanded to be dug really be under the Antarctic ice, with Azazel still there at this very moment? In chapter 54, the prophet sees a deep valley with chains, iron instruments, and tools. And it is said to him that those instruments are being prepared for the armies of Azazel, which will be cast into the ultimate abyss. Not a well or a cave, but an abyss. And the inevitable question is where the deepest abyss on the planet is currently located. The Bentley Subglacial Trench in Antarctica lies more than 2,400 meters below sea level, buried in ice. It is the lowest point on Earth, not covered by ocean, completely hidden, inaccessible, and impenetrable to humanity. If you wanted to imprison something forever in the deepest and most inaccessible place on the planet, that would be the exact spot to choose. Let's talk about what is happening right now, because Antarctica is changing rapidly and irreversibly. The ice is melting, glaciers are collapsing, and things buried for millions of years are emerging into view. In 2017, scientists documented a crack of more than 180 kilometers in Antarctica. When that crack finally separated, it released an iceberg the size of a small nation in just a few days before the entire world. But the most relevant thing is the land that was exposed when the ice disappeared, never seen by anyone. In 2018, a team of geologists reported having found what appeared to be stone structures on Antarctica's Livingston Island. Rectangular foundations, carved blocks, and walls with angles too precise to be natural formations. The discovery was not confirmed, the area was immediately restricted, and nothing more was published about it. Why the immediate restriction? What exactly are they protecting beneath that ice that is melting faster each year? According to Enoch, the prison was designed to hold the Watchers until the day of judgment, no longer. But what if the ice itself is the prison, and the layers of frozen water are the chains that hold them? And what if, while the planet warms and the ice melts, those chains are breaking silently? There is a prophecy in the Book of Enoch that most overlook because it seems like a ritual conclusion. In chapter 69, it says that in those days the earth will give up what it has kept, and all the chained will be free. Right now, without anyone having officially declared it, that process is already underway beneath the ice that gives way each year. Fossils, landscapes hidden for eons, buried structures, and possibly something much more dangerous than any known fossil. In 2020, an ancient virus was discovered in the Antarctic ice, perfectly frozen intact for over 15,000 years. When the scientists thawed it under controlled conditions, it came back to life as if nothing had happened. The discovery of that virus changed what we know about how long biological information can persist in ice. If something as fragile as a virus can remain intact for 15 millennia, the possibilities become truly disturbing. The question is no longer whether something can survive under the Antarctic ice, but what kind of entities are doing so right now. What sleeps beneath that ice did not ask to be awakened, but global warming is not asking for its opinion. Let's return for the last time to chapter 90, where Enoch describes the vision that precedes the eternal final judgment. There will come a time when the righteous are gathered and the wicked judged under a light that allows for no shadows or possible escape. See a new heaven and a new earth where the righteous dwell in peace. But before that peace, see what comes first without exception. Behold the opening of the abyss, the release of the chained ones, and a final battle between the forces of light and darkness. I am not here to predict the end of the world or to alarm based on prophecies written 3 millennia ago. I am here to point out something specific. If Enoch's geography is accurate, then the 7 mountains and the abyss are real today. If the burning sky points to Antarctica, then the rest of the text also deserves rigorous attention. Because if he was accurate in the location with impossible precision for his time, he could also be right about what follows. Antarctica is no longer just an icy continent. It is a key to understanding where we truly come from. a key to understanding what has been hidden for millennia, and perhaps to grasp what is beginning to be revealed now. The structures that emerge, the viruses that awaken, and the landscapes that reappear are signs that cannot be ignored. What humanity finds when that process becomes irreversible could change everything we think we know. The question that Enoch left us is not whether the Watchers exist, but whether we are prepared for what the thaw will reveal. And what lies beneath that ice perhaps represents the most important question our civilization faces today. A question that sacred texts raised millennia ago and that modern geophysics is beginning to answer. The convergence between the Book of Enoch and real Antarctic geography cannot be dismissed without serious investigation. If you want to continue exploring the mysteries that ancient texts have hidden for millennia, subscribe so you don't miss anything.